Welcome to the September meeting of the Houston.NET Users Group. You're welcome to join us in person for pizza, prizes, and networking on the second Thursday of every month. Our meetings are hosted by Improving Houston in their office at 10111 Richmond Avenue, just inside the Beltway in Houston's West Chase District. You can check us out for meeting notifications at hdnug.org, on Facebook, or on LinkedIn. And now, a word from our sponsor, Whitaker IT. Whitaker IT is a national IT staffing firm that specializes in providing project support, staff augmentation, and direct hire services for today's highest demand IT markets, including ERP, business and custom applications including .NET, Java, open source technologies, IT security, big data, and healthcare IT. For a comprehensive list of our current IT job openings, please call our recruitment team or visit our IT job portal at www.whitakerit.com. And now our featured speaker, Jason Aubrey, presenting The Independent Developer, Lessons Learned from 5 Years of Self-Employment.
I like that.
You laughed too hard at any of these jokes. This is the right presentation for you. Perhaps my favorite movie of all time. What is it? Office Space. Come on. Who hasn't seen Office Space?
Right.
So, howdy, my name is Jason Aubrey. Pizza? I just started, now you're saying the pizza's here.
It's here.
Okay, before I start talking, get pizza.
Yay! Thank you, Jason.
All right, we're done. My name is Jason Aubrey. I'm a software developer based here in Houston. I run my own consulting business, sort of obviously, that's what the talk is about. I've been doing that for just shy of 5 years now. And we're going to talk tonight about, it's sort of a two-part talk. The first part is a little bit of a narrative of how I got from being a traditional W-2 full-time employee and how I made that transition to independence and running my own business. And then the second part is going to be a little more traditional bullet points, and we'll talk about the ins and outs and practicalities of what it's like to be self-employed, the pros and cons, and things you should and shouldn't do. If you have questions while I'm going, feel free to interrupt me, yell at me, raise your hand, whatever works. I have 3 kids, so having people yelling at me is pretty common in my household. I respond very well to that. If I tell you to shut up and go to your room, that's, ignore me.
Daddy, daddy, daddy.
Yeah. So let's jump into it. So like I said, we're going to start with the narrative portion. So Monday, October 28, 2013, that's just under like 4 years, 10 months, and 10 and a half months ago, so coming up on 5 years. That was a Monday. I got to work in the morning, and I was sitting there at my desk looking at bugs or maybe browsing Reddit, whatever normal Monday morning stuff. And I got this Skype message from my boss, hey, come and see me. So I went into his office and sat down, and he said, close the door. And then he said, this isn't working out, we're going to let you go. How many of you have heard that speech before?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if I'm pleasantly or unpleasantly surprised by the number of people who haven't heard that speech. Good for you, because it's not a great way to start your day, but I always thought that was probably much more common a thing people went through at some point in their career. So congratulations that you haven't hit that yet. But for me, that was not the first time I'd heard that. How many of you have given that speech to an employee before? Anyone want to admit that? Yeah. So the reality of it is once you hear those words come out of your boss's mouth, it's over. they've made the decision. HR's does sign the paperwork. You can't discuss it with them. There's no negotiation. It's over. You get your stuff and walk out. That's just the way it is. And I've been around the block long enough that I understand that. Not that it makes it any less sucky to hear, but that's the way it is. So he and I discussed a few practicalities of final paycheck and all that sort of stuff, and I cleaned up my office and went home and was driving up 45 on my way home, and this is where I was at that point in my life. I had just turned 40. I had about 16 years of professional experience. I was safely in that kind of senior developer level of my career. My wife was a stay-at-home mom. I had 3 kids. 2 of them were still in preschool. 1 was in elementary. 3 cats. Still have 3 cats. They're not all the same cats, but and I had 2 cars and a car payment. I had 1 house and a mortgage, and I had 0 incomes. And I was not independently wealthy. So the upshot of all that is that I was not someone who could afford to not have a job. I needed a job. I needed a paycheck to keep all this stuff afloat. But at the same time, emotionally, this is sort of where I was. Absolutely every single thing about software development industry, I hated with deep burning, fiery passion. I was just so fed up with everything. I was not in a good place driving home on 45, thinking about how I was going to explain this to my wife. And I literally had just reached my saturation point. I think this is something most of us have felt at one degree or another at some point, or one or more points in their career. But I was just, completely underwater with hatred for everything about software development, which is a problem because that's the only marketable skill I have. I have to make my living that way because I'm too old and out of shape to dig ditches, and I just literally have no other skills. So what I came to realize, this did not happen on that drive home, but after reflecting on it a little bit, this is kind of what I've come to realize. What my real problem was that I didn't have the agency over my own life, over my own career. And some of you might be familiar with this use of the word agency, maybe not. It's sort of a sociological term that basically means, do you have the capacity to act? Do you have the capacity to control yourself in a given environment? If you do, then you have agency. If you don't, you don't. And kind of what it comes down to, I think, is that I, even though I was 16 years in, I had several senior developer positions, I did not have the capacity to say no to anything. My boss gives me a project, I say yes, let's go. Customer wants this, customer wants that, it's yes, let's figure it out. No matter how bad the idea is from the customer or your boss or whatever, or coming down from corporate, or how stupid the HR policy is, you have to go along with it, because that's just the game. You're an employee, you don't have any control. It's very hard to swim upstream and those sorts of things. You kind of have to keep your head down and go with it, and maybe you have a good relationship with your boss, and you have that argument with him that this isn't the best way to go, or this is going to blow up on us in the future. But in my experience, at the end of the day, they're going to do whatever makes the company money. And they're very reluctant to ever say no to a customer or to a paying project, no matter how bad the idea is. And that, that was sort of the root of all the frustration I had, is that I just been on too many stupid projects that were ill-conceived, that were not serving long-term interests of the customer, or that were, just really poor uses of the skill of the team involved. Whatever, just all of that was kind of what led me to this point. Feeling that way that I did, I was really not in a good place to go out and start calling up recruiters and say, hey, I need a job, let's interview. Where can you find me? Because I'm angry, and your customers really want to talk to an angry programmer and hire him. That just wouldn't work. And I couldn't, I really just, I knew I was not in a good place to do that. I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to do something different. And I think like a lot of people, I have had dreams throughout my career of quitting and being my own boss and being self-employed. But all that baggage that I talked about earlier with the incomes and the mortgages and car payments and the children kind of kept me from going down that road. But there's a little bit of backstory I need to slip in here is that I'd actually, prior to this, I'd actually done some independent contracting on the side, some side jobs, and I was set up. I had an LLC formed, I had a bank account. I had a little bit of experience doing that sort of work on the side, and I had a few contacts. And I actually had a contract that I just signed a few weeks earlier that was for 20 hours a week of work. And when I signed that, me and the client both understood that I didn't have 20 hours a week to give him because I was working a full-time job, but I was going to do 8 hours on the weekends maybe, and he was fine with that. But the contract was written for 20. And so I thought to myself, well, if I do 20 hours a week, that will earn me enough money to keep me from losing my house, and keep the utilities paid. I can kind of barely keep afloat at that level with that income and my savings. And then if I could find enough other work to fill in the other 20 hours a week, that would actually be a sustainable living. And my wife, God bless her, when I told her this, did not laugh at me and went along with that plan. So, it's funny because I can't remember the exact conversation we had now, or because it was within a few days that I decided this. And I really wish I remembered more clearly actually having that conversation with her and us agreeing to this, but it's kind of lost in my memory now. But she agreed, and that's basically what I did. That's how it started for me. Getting laid off on a Monday, then basically by the end of the week deciding that I wasn't going to go back to work for someone else again. I was going to work for myself. I was going to have a little bit of control over my own life. And sort of the kind of agreement we had was that this was in October, so I would try this, and if by the end of the year it didn't work out, what really wasn't coming together, I'd start looking for a regular job. That was my fallback plan, is I was pretty confident I could find a real job if I needed to. And so we kicked it off. We had the trial period, and basically 5 years later, I'm still kind of in that extended trial period where if it all falls apart, I'm going to go out and find a real job, but until it does, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And so no one is more surprised than me that it's actually worked out like this. I did not spend a lot of time planning and thinking about it and making any grand 5-year plan. Really, my plan has always been just as long as I don't lose my house, as long as we keep bills paid, that's success. And that just sort of has been gradually going on for 5 years now. So that was the narrative. That was my sort of spoken word art performance piece. And now we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of talking about what it's like to be self-employed and how you actually mechanically pull it off and do it from week to week. So, big warning here. I'm a programmer. I'm not even the best programmer I know. I'm an adequate programmer. But I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. Please take everything I say with a grain of salt. If you choose to follow my path or take any of my advice, please seek outside counsel before you make any life-changing decisions or tell your boss to go stuff himself. So this is sort of the, I decided to kind of front load the key takeaways so that if anyone has to leave earlier or whatever reason, we get these covered first, and we'll discuss them in more detail as we go. But You need some sort of legal setup to protect yourself. It doesn't need to be an LLC, but that is by far the easiest thing to do. You need a bank account. You do not put business money does not go in your personal account. Never, ever, ever keep a separate business bank account. Keep your finances separate. The IRS has a term for that. Or a term for not doing that, which is commingling funds, and they do not like that. Always sign a contract. Never do business with someone without a contract. This has come back to bite me in the past, so don't do what I did. Always have a contract. Be prepared for tax time. Taxes are inevitable. They come up every year. If you're self-employed or you're running a business, they come up every quarter. So they should not surprise you. They always kind of surprise me. They're actually, the next quarterly payment is due, I think, Saturday. Always be ready for that, because that is a huge issue. Track your time. Even if you only have one client, you're billing them 40 hours a week, whatever, use some sort of system for tracking your time so that if they ever question what you did for them to justify the hours that you're billing, that you don't spend hours looking at emails trying to figure out what you did last week, that you have it written down already, and you could easily create a report that says, this is why I billed you 40 hours. This is the work I did. There's not anything to argue about. Pay yourself. Kind of obvious, but I have just like when I was an employee and I got paid every 2 weeks or twice a month, whatever. Now I am an employee of my own business, and I pay myself religiously. Every 2 weeks I write a paycheck to myself. That is our household money for paying our bills and everything. And doing that regularly allows us to maintain a regular sort of, household budget. Let me, of course, below every month like everyone else does, I think, but don't forget that. And don't rely on a single income stream. This is sort of difficult. I mean, in some ways it's really great if you can land one big client who can give you 40 hours of reliable work week in and week out, because that makes your life a lot easier. You don't have to spend a lot of time finding new work, but there are so many things beyond your control that can happen. That client can have financial problems. They can, they can have their budget cut for the quarter. They can just have it canceled overnight. There's so many things that can happen that can cause that income stream to drop instantly, and you won't have a backup, and that can be a big problem. So, expounding on the point about LLC, you need a legal entity. You can go into business as yourself, which is called sole proprietorship. I'm Jason, I'm your programmer, and if you want to write me a check or pay me in cash, just write the check to Jason Aubrey. And that's perfectly legal, and that works. But the problem is that there's no separation between your business and your personal life. There's no separation between your business and your personal money. And there's no separation between your business property, like your laptop, and your personal property, like your house. And if someone decides to sue your business, they can't sue your business because you don't have a business. They sue you personally, and everything you own gets put at risk because of that. That's obviously not a good situation to be in. Next step up from sole proprietorship is LLC, which is a limited liability corporation. That's what I have. You're freaking me out as I keep walking away from the camera. I like to wander when I talk, so that's fine. Limited liability corporation, and this is sort of a legal entity that's set up basically to accommodate small businesses, small independent businesses, where it gives me a legal shield that I have an LLC established. It's called PostDotNet Consulting, LLC, our Texas LLC, and all of my contracts are in the name of that LLC. All of my checks from clients are in the name of that LLC. My bank account's in the name of that LLC. If anything should go wrong with my business and I get sued, theoretically at least, that provides a shield for all of my personal income and my personal assets like my house. So they only can go after the LLC, they cannot go after me personally. So that's a very important protection that you want to have. It's very easy to set up. I actually established mine originally when I was living in Virginia. I knew I was going to move back to Texas, so I filled out the paperwork online. It cost like $300 with the Texas Secretary of State. There's no reason not to do it. It's cheap and it's easy, and it'll give you some protection. And there's almost no ongoing paperwork to deal with in terms of maintaining that year to year with the state.
You have to file every year. You need to file every year whether or not you make money.
Right, and I would come to that later. So I would strongly suggest you do this. You can also establish a corporation, a more traditional corporation, an S Corp or a C Corp. I'm not as well versed in the ins and outs of these legally, but they're more complex, there's more paperwork involved, they're more expensive to do. A nice thing about the LLC is that even though my personal income, or my personal money and the business money are separated, at tax time, it all gets thrown together. So I only have to fill out one tax return. All of my corporate income flows through to my personal tax return. So it's pretty easy to do. Well, I say easy, like a huge asterisk to do my taxes at the end of the year. If you have an S Corp or C Corp, you have to do the business taxes separately from your personal taxes. You also, sometimes people ask about, well, you know, I heard I should go to Delaware to establish my corporation because their laws are so much more favorable or whatever. I think that may have been true at one time. I don't think that's necessarily true anymore. I personally don't think it's you should just do it where you live and where you operate. There's very little reason not to, but I'm sure you can find people who will argue otherwise, that there's some weird legal benefit to doing it in this state or that state. Do I need a lawyer? This is something where what I say and what other people would say would probably differ a lot. I didn't use a lawyer. I've never used a lawyer. I'll get you in a second, okay? I know lawyers, so that if I ever got to a point where I needed a lawyer, I think I would pretty comfortably find one very quickly. But I don't have one on retainer. I don't have. I'm comfortable enough reviewing my own contracts and doing my own paperwork that I haven't really gotten to the point where I thought that was necessary. Although I'll make a point here that John?
I'm John Harris.
John Harris right here talked to me before we started and mentioned that he's part of a group called SCORE, which is sort of a group of retired business executives that help provide consulting and whatnot services to independents and startups and entrepreneurs. So
Free lawyer.
yeah, so they're not going to represent you in court, but they'll give you advice.
Much as
So
you
that
need.
is something definitely that moving forward I'm gonna look into and take advantage of. Do you need an accountant? Again, there's my answer, there's everybody else's answer. I don't use one. My month finances are pretty simple. I track it myself. My taxes are, it's a huge pain in the butt every year when I have to file taxes, but that's mostly my own cause, my own doing. I don't know that having an accountant involved would make a huge difference, and it would be another cost for me that I'm trying to avoid. But again, this is something where I kind of waver about it a lot, where I think, well, maybe, you know, especially right after tax time, I think, well, God, next year I'm going to have an accountant do it for me. And then I never pull the trigger on that because I'm busy with other stuff.
Bank of America business account will actually give you the free services that you file your taxes, file everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Bank of America give you the business account.
Okay. I used to use them and I stopped using them because I got tired of their fees, but maybe I should
No
think about that
fees.
again. This was quite a while ago, before this roundabout of my business. So there was a question back there I missed.
Is there ongoing recurring costs on the LLC, or is it just next year?
No, there's no recurring cost in the LLC. Whatever the upfront couple $100 I spent, I do have to file a Texas franchise tax return every May, which is like a one-page form I do online, and there's I think it's a $250,000 minimum or cap before, or maybe it's floor, before you have to pay any taxes to Texas. So
1.2 million.
1 million?
Really?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless, I'm not making that kind of money.
Yeah.
So I don't have to pay any taxes to the state of Texas.
But there is a big fine if you don't file it, even though you didn't make anything.
I got fined $50 one year because I
Yeah.
forgot to file.
Yep.
That's not a big fine.
But
Yeah.
you don't say much anything
But you
about
get on their
business
radar.
insurance.
You get on their radar.
I've been here for like 45 more minutes, man. So yeah, there really are no ongoing costs to the LLC.
How do you track your expenses and stuff like traveling to your clients and things like that?
Quicken, Excel, you know, I don't do, the vast majority of my work is done from home, so I don't have a lot of, when I do travel, it's pretty concrete set of expenses. And usually they'll be reimbursed by somebody too, so once I file my reimbursement, that's kind of the end of it.
Excuse me, do you need to pay like Medicare, Medicaid?
Let's talk about that. So I think one of the biggest questions people want to know is, how do I pick a rate? What do I charge my clients? I still struggle with this. But this is sort of this is what I would suggest you think about, the thought process you use if you're thinking about going down this road. Start off with whatever salary you make at your real job, and divide that by 2,000 billable hours in a year. And that's going to get you kind of a base idea of what your rate should be in order to equate to what your salary would be if you had a W-2 job. But you have to think about all of those things that your company pays for that you now have to pay for because you don't have a big corporation backing you up. Taxes, benefits, insurance, office supplies, internet, mileage, phone, all that stuff comes out of your pocket, so you need to factor that in to your revenue. If we go all night without tripping over this, it could be a miracle. And think about, are you really going to bill 40 hours every week for 50 weeks a year? What happens if the client, you know, the project dries up and you're in between projects for 2 weeks? You don't want to pay any. You go on vacation. You want to pay for vacation now. You don't pay vacation, you pay for it. You have a sick day. You have travel time to a conference, so you can't work while you're traveling. You can't work while you're driving.
To pay for the conference.
So anyway, it's and this is something I really didn't appreciate going into it, but I love to rag on salesmen and make salesman jokes and talk about how they're the scum of the earth, but you do gain a little bit of more appreciation for that role when you have to sell yourself. And I might spend, you know, a couple hours a week talking to a potential client about a new project. That's time I'm not billing for. That's sales time. And that may go on for, you know, a few hours a week for a week or two or a month. And nothing comes out of it in the end. That's just lost time that I don't get paid for. If I'm lucky, that'll turn into a real contract and I'll get back all that time I invested in selling myself, but sometimes I don't. So you need to account for that time too. So to factor all, and there are calculators out there on the internet that will take all this stuff into account and help you figure out numbers. I think a good base rule of thumb is take your current salary, multiply it by 1.5, divide by 2,000 billable hours, and that'll get you your base rate. That's sort of that's the bare minimum you can charge and still kind of maintain somewhat your standard of living and you know, still pay your bills. And that's kind of where I started at 5 years ago. I had sort of a number that I worked out that I knew would keep me, you know, afloat. And I constantly want to raise that number. And I try to, every time I talk to a new client, every time someone calls me, every time I am approached with a new deal, they ask me what my rate is, and I raise it, I bump it up $5 or $10 an hour from what it was my last project. And sometimes they bite and say, sure, no problem. And that's great, and I'm very happy. And sometimes they kind of go, you know, that's not really in our budget. And then I know that if I really need the work, then I can fall back to my prior rate and still be okay. And I don't do that quite as religiously as I should, but basically following that process has let me consistently bump my rate up every year for the past 5 years. So it's quite a bit higher than it was 5 years ago. It's not retired to the Hamptons high enough, but I'm working on it. Flip side of how what you charge is how do you get paid. You will have a contract with your client and you invoice according to what the contract says. I would highly suggest you invoice at least twice a month, every other week. I have one client who I invoice weekly. You want to be sure that you have a constant, steady stream of revenue coming in. And if you only bill once a month, that's a long time to wait for your checks. Even if it's a big check, it's still a long time to wait. Back to time tracking, be prepared to document your hours if they ask you. Most of my clients, or not most, many of my clients have their own timekeeping systems they want me to use. So I log my time daily in their system. I also have my own system I use as backup. I have some smaller clients who don't ask, but I still try to have it available if they want it. I have an Excel invoice template I use to generate invoices. I mean, I spend maybe 10 minutes a week on this overhead, so it's really minimal for me. I keep records. I've learned this over time. I have multiple Excel spreadsheets that I update. I have one that has all of my invoices, when I issued it, how much it was, what client it was, when it's due, when they actually paid it. So I can see who pays me late, who pays me ahead of time. You know, people that pay me ahead of time, I like those people. They're going to get more love from me. People who pay me late, maybe I'm not nearly as agreeable when they want to give me more work. Maybe I want to up my rate to accommodate for that that lag they have. At any time, in any moment in time, I can tell you how much I have in outstanding invoices, when I think they're due, so I can pretty reliably project my future revenue from my business with some degree of accuracy.
Got a question, Steve. When you invoiced or when you made the contract, do you include that if you paid me more than 10 days late, I charge you an extra percentage?
I have not. Most of the contracts I sign, the client provides it, I review it, and if I don't have any problems, I sign it. And usually they're pretty boilerplate. They have a 30-day, net 30 payment terms, and they usually have terms that say twice a month or every 2-week invoicing.
Do you use any tools for your invoicing, like FreshBooks or anything like that?
Excel. Yep.
Just Excel?
Because I'm only generating, I mean, right now I have 3 active projects going on, so I'm only generating, 3 invoices, 4 invoices. Well, I'm generating at most 6 invoices a month, so it's not like it takes a lot of time. It's not complex to do. But back to the payment penalties, I have not ever done that. There's probably some benefit in doing that, but at the same time, if I have a client that's not going to pay me on time, they're not a good client, and I really should move on and find a better client. The penalties are not going to. The penalties are probably not going to hurt them because they're, 10% is going to hurt a big business, and it's not even that much money to me either.
Well, it will hurt them if they don't pay and you take them to court, and,
Right.
and each month it goes up and up.
That's true, but I do my best to never get in that position. We'll talk about that more too.
Yeah, but I've heard there are some clients that will prolong it, and they figure
Yeah.
you won't ever sue them, so.
Yeah, and I'll never work for them again either. Yeah.
Some of the big guys, like the Exxons, their payables people look and see like a 1% net 10, and they get all gooey and will pay you because they annualize the amount.
Right.
But you're right, I don't think there's that much difference. That'd be the only people I think about.
Some clients mail me physical checks. Got one today. I love getting the mail because there's a check in the mail. Even if it's a little one, it makes me happy. A lot of them will use direct deposit to just I get an email from their bank saying that they set up an ACH transfer and it's coming in. That I like getting that email. But I have one client who pays me very regularly, and they pay me almost always a week in advance of what they're obligated to. And almost like every third Thursday or so, I'll get this email in the middle of the night from Wells Fargo letting me know that a payment has been made. And I wake up in the morning, check my email, and I see that. That just starts my day off in a happy place. That's money coming in. Clients will, or they should, if they're what they're doing, ask you for a W-9, which is basically an IRS form that you give them saying, this is my, this is my legal identity, here's my tax ID, blah, blah, blah. Fill this out, create a PDF, save it, and I've used the same one for 5 years now, in and out, that whenever a client asks for it, I have it there in my Dropbox. I just send it to them immediately. Don't have to think about it. What if I don't get paid? So, don't ever get so far in the hole with a client that it endangers your livelihood. If the first invoice you give them, if they're reluctant to pay it or they're late in paying it, or not even if it's not the first invoice, but the first time that happens, you need to start thinking about that relationship. And this goes back to what I talked about at the very beginning of having an agency. One of the wonderful things about being self-employed and being your own boss is that if you can fire a client. If you don't like them, you can terminate the relationship. All of my contracts have a mutual termination clause where they can back out, I can back out, no harm, no foul. So if I'm really, and I haven't really had to do this, but I thought about it. I have not gone into deals because I simply didn't have a good feel for them on the front end, just talking about it with the client. So I've chosen not to enter into relationships where I didn't have a good feel. I've never actually ended one. Well, that's not quite true. We'll talk about that. But that goes back to good record keeping, where I know what, at any given time, what I'm owed, how late every invoice is, or if it's late. And I can look at it and I can say, well, I've got one late invoice that concerns me, but I also have, my 3 other clients are all paying on time and they're solid. So maybe I just shift my focus over to their projects for a little bit until this other client gets on the ball. Maybe I talk to them, whatever. But I try to stop the bleeding, before you bleed out, I guess, is the way to look at it. Talking about lawyers, I never been involved in a lawsuit personally in my life. I never want to get involved in a lawsuit. I know people who have been sued for various reasons, and I know that it just ruins your life. Even if you win, even if it's a completely bogus bullshit lawsuit, just being involved in one, you know, is miserable. And I don't want to do that. I want to do everything I can to avoid that, avoid being sued, and I don't want to ever be in a position where I need to sue anyone. I don't know, some of y'all may know Marcus Eggers. He's a Microsoft RD who runs EPS Consulting up in Spring, and I used to work for him. And I was on a panel with him one time when he talked about, and he's been doing this for 25 years now probably, and he talked about kind of the same philosophy of just not wanting to get involved with lawyers or lawsuits, whatever, you know, whatsoever. There was just no upside. There's no amount of money that would make up for the huge pain in the ass that it would create for him personally for that months or years that lawsuit went on. He was very adamant about that, and I take his advice to heart. That said, I have had one client who didn't pay. This happened last year right after Harvey. I'd been doing some work for this client, often not a lot of work, but enough. And we had a good relationship, and they had been very responsive, and I invoiced them 3 times and gotten paid, and didn't have any problems. And then after Harvey, they just went radio silence on me. Wouldn't respond to emails, wouldn't respond to anything. They owed me several $1,000s. I emailed them, reminded them, you know, tried to call them. And this went on for a while, and this is also one of the few times I actually have gone into a business relationship without having a contract signed. So that was on me, stupidity. And ultimately, what I decided to do was just walk away. I write that off as the cost of learning a very expensive, not a very expensive, but a too expensive lesson about getting contracts signed. And even if I had a contract, I mean, I still would have had to get a lawyer to actually force the issue with them. That would have opened up that whole bag of worms of things I didn't want to do. I thought about it. I knew enough lawyers that I thought about just getting a lawyer to write them a letter, demand letter basically, asking them to pay. And then I figured that was just starting down a road that I didn't want to go down. And so I just let it go. And it's hilarious in retrospect. It was very, not at the time, but I've had recruiters call me and ask me about a job. And they tell me about the company, and I'm like, is this A? Okay, no. No, and tell every single one of your clients that you talk to that they shouldn't work for those people. I'm not going to badmouth them publicly, but I very much badmouth them privately, that they are unscrupulous and don't pay their bills and screw their contractors. And you should stay very far away from them. And I hope they rot. So, you know, and the other funny part is, as I swear, for the longest time, I was still a member of their VisualStudio.com account. And because whenever I log into my other clients' Visual Studio accounts, it shows you all the ones you're members of, and I would still be there. And I was still on, I think I was still on their Slack channel too, but I had visions of doing horrible things to their repo, but I did not. I'll say that publicly. I never ever did anything, and I think they finally caught up and figured it out and kicked me out. But anyway.
So regarding the clients, since you have 2-3 clients, how do you charge like per hour? So do you give less to each client, or do you have work more, like for example 40 hours per client, or will it be less than that, and then you have to
It just depends. And time management is not something I'm great at, which is not a good thing when you're self-employed. You really should be very much better about that than I am. It kind of depends on what they need. The one of the clients I have is their, you know, their needs are very low. So I might do 8 or 10 hours of work. I might go a week. I might go several weeks without doing anything for them. The other two clients are fairly significant. They both, they know that I have other obligations, but they also expect 20 to 30 hours a week from me. So I try to balance roughly 20 hours each. Sometimes one gets a little more, one gets a little less, depending on where they're at. Sometimes I work a little extra, and if one gets a little more, it all depends. It's hard. It's just like, if you're at work and your boss assigns you 3 projects at the same time with, different deadlines, and you have to juggle those projects, and he doesn't really want to hear about it. He just wants it done. It's very much the same situation. Contracts and NDAs. Contracts should always specify payment terms, twice a month, net 30. If you don't know what net 30 means, basically that means that the payment is due 30 days after receiving the invoice. So you'll see like net 15 and net 30 are kind of common terms. Generally mine are net 30. You definitely want to have a termination clause where if for any reason both of you can walk away and no harm, no foul, that's it. Always be sure every legal document you sign is in the name of your company, not your personal name. NDAs come up a lot of times, especially in the sales process. Before they even talk to you, they want you to sign an NDA, usually because they have a very overconfident idea of what their ideas are worth. And often they're not really worth anything, but I digress. But basically, if they ask me to sign an NDA before they want me to talk to them, okay, send it over, I'll sign it. They're pretty boilerplate. I'm not going to, just as a matter of professionalism, I'm not going to go talking about a client's internal business with anyone publicly or otherwise. So there's really very little harm to me in signing one. And if it makes the client feel better and and two, I'm sure there are other consulting companies that may be out there that if they want to send an NDA, it takes them 2 weeks and a vice president's approval to get it signed. And if I'll sign it, immediately, and I can have that conversation with them that much faster, that means I might win that job because the other guy is too busy with their own internal, politics or bureaucracy. Yeah.
Do you think there's any risk, like if you're working for 2 clients in similar industries, that you sign an NDA with one and then you work for another one and there's some type of some type of issue there?
No, some of my contracts I have, particularly when I'm doing subcontracting for another consulting company, have clauses about non-competes that I can't go work for one of their clients, which I'm generally okay with. I haven't really had a problem where I've felt that 2 clients, were in conflict or competition with one another, that it was a problem. If that ever came up, I would probably just bring it up at the beginning and ask them if that bothered them before we move forward. I actually had, this didn't happen to me personally, but I actually tried to make an introduction once between 2 different clients that I did subcontracting work for, because I thought they would have some possibly shared business interests. And so I connected them and they talked, but then one of them decided that basically that their business interests were a little too aligned. Yeah, and that it really, it would be a conflict for them to go forward with that. So the one guy, made that decision to back away, and the other guy, my other client, told me later that how much he respected that decision, that he was willing to walk away from the partnership because he felt like it was a conflict. He really thought that displayed a lot of integrity on the other guy's part. So that didn't hurt me or help me. Made me look a little bit better in my client's eyes. Taxes.
So does your contract have some arbitrage clause that basically they don't sue you, but you go to the arbitrage?
A lot of them do I guess arbitration clauses in them. Again, it's never ever really come up. But
so basically, you don't have your own contracts. You always sign the client contract, and they have a boilerplate.
Pretty much, that's how it's worked out so far. Because honestly, unless they're a very small client, they're gonna have their own contract anyway, and they're not gonna want to sign mine. So it's a waste of my time to come up with one. And the ones that I'm presented with are usually simple enough that I understand them, and I'm comfortable signing them and understanding their terms. Taxes. 5 years. I've never ever gotten this right. This is the worst. This is possibly the worst part of being self-employed is doing taxes. So you owe federal when you're a business, and this is true of me as a self-employed. This is true of Improving Enterprises as a corporation. They pay their taxes in 4 quarterly payments that are due September 15th, January 15th, April 15th, June 15th, I think those are the 4 dates, or whatever the nearest weekday is to that date. And then you still owe whatever, the balance is on April 15th, like everybody else does. Figuring out taxes is hard. Like I said, I've yet to get it quite right on my first go. The great thing about being self-employed is you get to deduct all your business expenses. Just bought a new $3,000 laptop. That is a big tax write-off come April. Looking forward to that. I haven't bought a new one in 3 years, so I'm due. Internet, phones, mileage you put traveling to a client, meals that you buy when you're traveling, meals that you buy when you're talking to a client, paper for the printer, business cards, software licenses, all that stuff are legitimate business expenses that I can deduct. So that's the good part of taxes.
As well, part of your house too, right?
Yeah, for my home, I get to deduct my home office because I work primarily from home. Keep good records, or as good records as you can. I've never been audited, but I hope again, I want to avoid that at all costs, but hopefully if I ever did, my records would be good enough. I don't know. So, with being self-employed, typically if you're a W-2 employee, and some of y'all might realize this, some of y'all might not, each pay stub every 2 weeks, and it shows that you your employer deducted Medicare and FICA from your net pay, and paid that to the government on your behalf. And that's 7.65% of your salary. What you don't see is that your company also paid 7.65% of your salary for FICA and Medicare out of their pocket. So you only see the part that comes out of your pocket. They also pay part out of their pocket. And when you're self-employed, they're the same pocket. So I pay 15.3% of what's termed self-employment tax to cover Medicare and Social Security out of my net income. And that adds up a lot.
So are you paying yourself salary?
Yeah, I pay myself every 2 weeks.
Are you aware of this latest tax law, with the Trump tax law, that actually pass through income is cheaper, less taxes?
I haven't.
We'll see.
I'm going to come April. I will be very familiar with that. I'm not sure yet how that will affect me, if at all. So, and that self-employment tax is on top of the federal taxes you already pay. So, what's hard is when you pay quarterly, you have to figure out, well, how much did I make? How much did I spend in business income? You have to be able to guesstimate what your end of year taxes are going to be and split it up into 4 quarterly installments. And like I said, I haven't gotten this right yet, but my best advice for this, and what I'm trying to do a better job of, is basically look at the prior year, look at what I made, look at what I owed in taxes, look at the current year, and basically figure out, am I on track to match that, or am I behind or ahead, and figure that out proportionally how that will affect my taxes. And I'm just not good at doing that. one of my biggest maybe flaws in terms of running the business so far is just not doing a good job of that. State taxes. This is a much happier story. There's a Texas state franchise tax that businesses have to pay. It only applies to, apparently that number is wrong, but it's still a big number. So as long as my revenue is below that number, I have to file a return, which in May 15th, but it's one page, very easy to fill out, and online. It's easy to do.
1.2 million on the franchise tax.
So is that like a gross revenue or net
Should be, I
revenue?
think it's 2.
It's net. Yeah. I look at, because it's due in May, I look at my federal tax return that I just did, and I take whatever I forget which number it is, but I don't know if it's my AGI or my net that I use either way the number is low enough that I'm under the cap. And that's what I use for calculating or for putting on my state return. Insurance, someone asked about this earlier. Many contracts require you to carry insurance to have general liability or errors and omission insurance, which is, I think, very basic business insurance that pretty much any business has. Tech insurance is a good place to start. They'll give you quotes from a bunch of different insurers. I want to say I'm paying about $1,000 a year for $1 million in coverage. And this is also a place where potentially, if I did get sued, having this insurance coverage in place would help cover me if I owe anything. Get it and then don't think about it. This is another very popular question. Okay, great, you're set up, you have business, you have all this stuff set up. How do you actually find the work? What about online presence, boards, forums, Stack Overflow, blogging, Twitter. I do some of the, I don't blog, I don't use Twitter. I'm very active on Stack Overflow in my area. I do participate on some discussion forums. LinkedIn is a big one. We'll talk about that in a second. Networking, going to things like this, meeting people, presenting, going to conferences. Recruiters. I've never got any business really directly from a recruiter, but I will get calls and I will talk to them. I try to be. I think like most developers, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with recruiters. She's gone, right? I understand their role in the development ecosystem, but I've had so many bad, encounters with recruiters who just obviously did not know what they were doing and didn't understand the technology and didn't know what the client wanted. They were just trying to find warm bodies, and that makes me very mad. But I never want to burn a bridge, so I try to, if they call me, and at least talk to them and see if they actually have something that sounds interesting. That I'll tell them up front, I really don't want a W-2 job. I'm a contractor, so if your client doesn't want a contract, that's the end of the story. But I'm happy to talk to them, and maybe that turns into a business lead for me. Maybe it doesn't, but I try not to burn those bridges. Speaking. User groups, conferences. I'm speaking at TechFest. I'm speaking at user groups. I've tried to get like a really good tech ed type speaking gig. That's never worked out, but I still try. There's actually a call for presentations for a conference in Russia that it was actually closed I think on Monday, and I was going to fill it out, and I started thinking about our relationship with Russia right now. And what my wife would say if I told her I was going to a conference in Russia, and I decided that was just not worth the argument that would ensue, so I didn't do it. I've never written a book. I know many people have written books, and they will all, I think, tell you that the money they earned was nowhere near the amount of time they invested in doing it. But sometimes the marketing bump they get and the word of, is worth it. I have written some magazine articles which pay better relative to the amount of time it takes, and so I can say that on my resume, my LinkedIn profile, that I'm a published author. I'd like to write a book, but I just honestly know myself well enough to know that I would be behind the deadline, whatever the deadline within weeks, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to create a hole for myself like that. Freelancing sites, guru.com and Freelancer, those sorts of sites, I've never had to go to them. I have accounts and I periodically will check them to see if anything's interesting going on. That's sort of my fallback plan if I ever get really desperate, that I will go check out those sites and see if there's any decently paying work. But you're generally competing with overseas developers whose rates are many, many times lower than mine, and it's not worth it. But that is, if you're starting out, you're just doing it on the side, and maybe worth it to you just to get some projects into your belt.
Well, I heard freelance sites too, that's where you have a hard time getting paid.
Yeah, yeah. So that's, like I said, I've never been that desperate, but again, never burn a bridge. Always try to maintain those relationships, but that doesn't mean you have to say yes. That means you can say no if it's not in your interest, if you don't have a good vibe with that client. And that's where networking pays off too, because I've talked to potential clients before, and then I go look at LinkedIn and I say, oh, look, Bob from the user group worked for them 2 years ago. Let me email Bob. Bob emails me back and says, oh my God, house on fire, stay away. And okay, I know then that I should really, really think that through before I accept a contract from those people. Get awards, certifications, MVP status if you can in your area. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I can't really say that it's ever directly gotten work, but I think there are, it doesn't hurt, It doesn't hurt when you're trying to especially when you're trying to differentiate yourself from other people that you compete against. If you can say that you have an MVP or award, or you're certified in the area, or you've written a book on the subject, those are all things that help, are in your favor, or they can even help make the argument that you can charge a higher rate than you would otherwise. So it's definitely worth doing. It helps to have a specialization. I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but almost all of my work that I've done for the past 5 years, 90+% of it has been in the Xamarin realm. That's my specialty, and it's a fairly hot area that does not have a lot of competition right now, so it helps me to find work.
Yeah, that's the problem I had with trying to go as an independent. I'm more of a generalist. I can do, and I can't decide on one area.
Yeah, I think if you're a generalist, it's harder to differentiate yourself, and it's harder to stand out. But so I think, and I can't say just pick a specialty. I mean, because you obviously want to pick something that's marketable and whatnot, but you know yourself better, and you know your area of interest better than I do. So think about that. Think about what's a marketable skill, and if you're a database guy, right now, I'm not, so I'll probably can't say it because it's stupid, but big data is a big thing, and if you can, or a lot of analytic type stuff. So if you can get certified in one of those areas, or write a magazine article, or even just claim to specialize in that might help you get some work. But I will say I know some people that are generalists who have are self-employed and have been successfully self-employed for longer than I have, and it works out for them. I think it would be harder to do it that way, but it's certainly possible. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, so like of the specific work, like in clients that you found for the last 5 years, kind of what would have been like the things that the majority of your work had come through? Because like you mentioned, like, some of these have not been so helpful, but what have been the ones?
Look at that.
Thank you so much.
You read my mind. So this is for 2015 to 2017. I looked at all of my revenue, and I tried to figure out kind of roughly where did that come. How did they find me in the first place? And what I found out was I made about $200,000 based on LinkedIn contacts. And I know a lot of developers hate LinkedIn, but man, it's my favorite thing. It works for me. And I haven't actually spent very much time on my profile. My profile is probably really out of date, but to the degree that I can, I call out that I'm an MVP, I'm a Xamarin expert. People are looking for that skill set in our area or even out of our area. They're going to find me pretty quickly, I hope. Probably should spend some more time cleaning it up and updating it and buzzwording it and all that, but.
What do the different colors mean?
Those are different clients or different revenue buckets, I guess. I don't know. And then the second highest was just general networking, and that I think that is a lot of that is just word of mouth, or not word of mouth. Actually, it's probably projects I've gotten just from people I know through the community that I've known for years, who knew that I was freelancing now and needed Xamarin help, and have led 2 or 3 different projects for me that way. After that, I got one major project I got via the Xamarin forums where they posted they were looking for a freelancer to help them, and I responded, and that I still am working for them today. That's been an ongoing source of good revenue for years. I've gotten one direct gig that I'm really aware of from speaking at a conference. I did a Xamarin thing here in Houston last year. The guy from San Antonio came, and I talked to him, and a week or 2 later, his boss called me and said, "Hey, we really need some help. Can you come to San Antonio?" And that's one of those cases where I bumped my asking rate a little bit higher than what it had been for my prior project, and he did not blink. He said, "Sure, that's great. Come on down." And that was about 3 months worth of work for me. So that was a good project. And I can't even remember what direct constitutes. It didn't add up to a lot. So. The pipeline, this kind of goes back to someone asked earlier about how I juggle multiple projects at one time. The pipeline is the idea of, well, what am I doing right now, and what am I going to do next with this current project ends, and how do I schedule things so that I don't run out of money, and I also don't run out of time and overwork myself. And this is hard. I don't do it. I have never done it correctly. I mean, it's kind of worked out for the most part, but I can't claim that I have any magical system that works, that you can copy. And this is time. Managing this process is time that is not billable. This has not been a huge problem for me, but it's a risk that you either have nothing or you have too much, and hopefully you charge a high enough rate and you plan well enough that you have a couple of months of padding so that if you hit a rough spot where you don't have a project, you're okay. I have a friend I did some work with a year or 2 ago who's been doing the same sort of thing for a while, and he would work a project, and then when it was over, if he didn't have anything lined up, he would just go on vacation or take time off, spend it with his family, and he wouldn't just worry about it. He kind of built in an expectation that he wasn't always going to have an immediate next project. I am not operating that way. Never assume today's project will last forever. Probably the best or the worst experience I've had, or where this bit me, was last summer. I've been working on a project for an oil and gas company through a subcontractor, as a subcontractor, for about a year. Been, very busy with this. And I went on vacation for a week. And when I came back, I talked to the guy that he was contracting through, and he's like, yeah, we're rolling out the project. And okay, because that was, at the time, that was almost all, that was 90% of my work was working on that project, and I wasn't prepared for it to end as quickly as it did. And it's not that the client wasn't happy with me, I didn't get kicked off the project, it was really just that they were kind of naturally in the phase where they were starting to wind down and roll some resources off. And part of this was my fault for not having a better line of communication with my client, the intermediary, about schedule. We should have had more discussions about that so that this decision didn't catch me by surprise. And I'm still doing work for him now for other clients, so our relationship is still okay. And it's not anything bad that he did to me, it's just really a poor communication on both of our parts that led to that. At the same time, early on, I thought it was great when one client wanted all my time, it made my life easier. Like there's just one client to bill and one invoice to cut, and one check to look for. But over time, I've gotten a lot more wary of that because, A, if this happens, they decide to drop the project for whatever reason, instantly you're left adrift. And it's also, I've seen where they say they want Aubrey time, but in reality, you don't actually get 40 hours a week of billable time out of them. It's just, I don't know, I'm not as crazy about that idea as I used to be. Even though it's hard to juggle multiple clients, I like having multiple revenue streams so that I'm a little more protected should one of them go away. Tools that I use, Excel a lot, Gmail for everything. Toggle.com I use for timekeeping. It's a free timekeeping software. It works really well. I like it. Quicken and TurboTax for taxes. MacBook for everything. Dropbox, love Dropbox. So I mean, I can be on vacation. I mean, I got to the point now when I go on vacation, I don't take my laptop with me. But if if the client needed a document or I needed to check my records or something, they're all in my Dropbox. So I can get to everything from my phone. I don't have any bullet points in this one. This is just something to discuss. I think most developers are a little bit more on the introvert side than extrovert, and they're not real comfortable selling themselves. And I am that way completely. But you kind of have to get over it. You have to be willing to do this a little bit to make this work. Every time I ever talk to a potential new client, it's always like having a job interview, a phone interview, where you are basically telling them about your last 3 projects and blah blah blah, and what you learned, what you did wrong, what you did right, and what you would have changed, and it's sort of very tedious to do, and you spend a lot of time talking about yourself, and I do not enjoy it, but I just accept that that's part of the reality that if you want to get new business, you have to be willing to talk yourself up a little bit. You have to be willing to go up to strangers and hand them business cards. You have to be willing to interrupt conversations at conferences and say, hey, I overheard you talking about this. I've dealt with that before. Let me tell you about it. You have to get out of your shell a little bit. Cash flow is very important. I think most of us as adults probably have an innate feel for this, even though we may not really know the accounting theory behind it. But if you have a $2,000 invoice coming in next week, but your rent is due today, that $2,000 is worth nothing. You have to know when your money is coming in. You have to know when your money is going out. You have to be able to plan for that ahead of time, so that you have adequate cash on hand to pay the bills when you need them. And that's again kind of where it can be problematic if you have one big client who you only invoice once a month. That check may be $20,000, but if you're not getting it till the end of next month, it's not worth anything to you. And $20,000 seems huge, but once you pay your quarterly taxes and you pay your car payment and you pay your rent and the orthodontist, I mean, that money goes fast. It's just like when you read about these people who win the lottery and like 3 years later they're homeless again, because they assume that money would keep coming in forever, and it doesn't. It stops, and they're not prepared for it. I kind of made this point earlier, but having the sort of idea of this three-legged stool approach, where you have maybe one primary client and two secondary clients at any one time, so that you have if one goes away, you're not completely bereft. You have something else to rely on. Or have some alternate income stream. This is not something I have done myself yet, but something I think about a lot is the idea of, right now all of my income is basically coming from me selling myself. Either I'm coding, charging per hour, or I'm speaking, charging per hour, training, charging per hour, consulting, charging per hour. What I need to do, what I want to do, and I just haven't quite figured this out yet, is have a revenue stream that does not involve me doing any sort of work per hour. I need to have my own product that I just sell licenses for. I need to have some sort of passive business, web hosting for clients, where I just host their sites and I don't have to do any daily work for them. I just be sure that the site stays up, that sort of stuff. Something that is not an hourly based revenue stream would help my cash flow a lot, but I think about it a lot. I just haven't come up with an answer that works for me yet. So this is kind of the big conundrum that underlies being self-employed, is that I want more. I want more money. I want to earn more, but I don't want to work more. I want to work less. So how do I do that? So I want to earn more, and I want to work less. I could raise my rate, which is something I constantly try to do. I can have another income stream. I've thought about this quite a lot, but the idea of subcontracting some of my work out to somebody else, somebody cheaper, who would help me do my work, and I would pay him or her a lower rate than I charge, and so I'd get more. I guess that'd be a multiplier for me, and I don't do that for a couple of reasons. A, I just really don't want to be managing somebody else. And then some of my contracts specifically forbid this, so I don't want to violate my contract or ruin a relationship with the client. But it's a thought. Outright hiring minions, going from being a one-person company to being a four-person company where I would have employees. I know people who do this. I know people who know how to make this work for them, and know how to navigate the paperwork and the taxes and the whatnot of having employees. I want no part of that. I like a minimal paperwork lifestyle, so actually having employees would ruin that, and I'm just really reluctant to even go down that road. Find a passive revenue stream, that's what we just talked about. And find a non-hourly revenue stream, a revenue stream that doesn't require me working X hours in order to be active. So, having said all that and blathered on for an hour or however long I've been going, what are the good things about this lifestyle that I've been doing for 5 years? Going back to this thing I brought up earlier, the idea of agency and the fact that I feel like I have more control over my life. That is psychologically, that is a huge thing for me. this is huge. I mean, I really cannot stress this enough. If I want to take a vacation, I don't have to ask permission from anybody. I tell my clients I'm taking a vacation, I won't be available, you know, here's my emergency house better be on fire phone number if you need me. But I never ask. I don't need their permission. It's not their decision. I am not their employee. The psychological magic of this is just huge. I don't take a lot of vacation. I can't really afford to take a lot of vacations. I have 3 kids. But, you know, if I want to, if I just want to have a day off, if I want to go volunteer at school, if I want to go I'm going on a long weekend because I'm a Boy Scout leader, we're going camping. All that sort of stuff, it's completely up to me to make that decision. I have to be smart about it. I can't, if a client has a huge release planned for the week after, that's probably not a good time for me to take a vacation. You know, I have to be sure I can afford to lose those billable hours. I have to think all those things through, but it's my decision to make. It's not anybody else's, and that is so important to me. I work from home like over 90% of the time. The past 3 days I've actually had to get up and drive to the Woodlands because I was teaching a class. I was having to actually get up like early in the morning and like put clothes on and interact with people, which I normally don't do. Work, you know, usually I get up, you know, sit there in my pajamas and it's like 3 or 4 hours. Eventually some client will ping me on Slack, and that's, you know, my human interaction for the day. So that was weird for me to have to do this 3 days in a row, be social, and then come speak tonight too. So on the opposite, they take the day off tomorrow and just sleep. But again, this is a huge benefit to me, and if I ever had to go back to a job that wanted me in the office full time, I had a email this week from a recruiter. Tony and I talked about this, from someone in Clear Lake looking for a Xamarin developer. Like, drive to Clear Lake every day, work from home, you know. And I live way the heck up north in Sprague, so you know, that's a pretty easy decision to make. I set my own hours, you know. Again, if I need to take off 2 hours in the middle of the days and go to school and have lunch with my kids or help out, you know, with the book fair or whatever, I can do that. You know, it's up to me. I don't have to ask. You know, my kids are all still fairly young, and it's important for me at this point in their lives that I can be actively engaged. And I you know, for my youngest two that are in elementary, I mean, I know that I'm one of the few dads that is, you know, you will see actually volunteer very often at their school, and that's huge for them. They like seeing me there. They're real young, so they still like me. They're not like, my teenager would probably die in shame if I showed up in his school, but
it makes it all worth it.
Yeah,
really
some
does.
days.
Yeah.
And I have time. I'm on the board with Habitat for Humanity. I volunteer with them. That's important to me. You know, again, I have to be careful about how I manage my schedule and make commitments to things like that, but I do it. And I can say no, you know. That I don't do it a lot, but I can if I need to. And I, even within the scope of the project, I have a lot more agency, you know, with my clients where they say, we really want to do X, and I can be really blunt with them that I do not think that's a good idea. That's not the way we should go. You know, and maybe if you really insist on going that way, I'm not the right guy for you, but you're paying me for my professional advice, and that's what I'm telling you. And sometimes, you know, that if you're working for a consulting company, maybe they don't want to, they don't want to be blunt with the client. They really do. Maybe, you know, I can't paint with too broad of a brush because I know there are many good ones out here. And this is sort of a weird one, but when you bill by the hour for your professional work, you kind of get an innate sense of what your time is worth, and you have a better idea of things in your personal life and what their cost benefit is. So there are things like, I used to say I would never ever pay someone to cut my grass. That's, you know, that's just weird, you know, this is Texas, a man mows his own lawn, Hank Hill, you know, go Arlen. And then I had twins, and I was like, oh, and then I figured, you know, and it takes like 3 hours to mow my lawn in August, and that's just, but I honestly, things like that though, I think about them, what does it cost me to pay someone to do that, and what would it cost me if I did that work myself for 3 hours? What is the, what am I losing potential revenue being mowing the lawn versus sitting at my desk and coding? And that makes it a very easy decision that it's much cheaper and worthwhile to pay someone to do that work for me. Changing my oil, you know, that's a big waste of my time. It's something I can pay someone very easily to do. And that's sort of a little bit of the decision-making process that goes into a lot of this other stuff. That I'm taking vacation, I'm taking a day off, I'm going to take some time to volunteer at school. I have to kind of in my mind, I'm not necessarily consciously doing this, but I am thinking about the idea of, well, how much time is that going to take me? What am I losing? Is that billable time I can make up later? Will I be working this weekend to do that? Will I be working at night in order to make up for that? Or could I just do it and not, you know, I'm not busy right now, so it's no big deal, you know? Those are all sorts of things that I sort of, you know, in the back of my mind calculate when I make decisions like that.
Excuse me?
Yeah,
so,
sorry.
Regarding the vacation or day off, so client might be dependent on you for, let's say, the deadline is coming and you need to get this out the door, and all of a sudden you say, I want to take a day off. So in a way, don't you have to coordinate with the client a little bit?
Sure, you know, and I do. I mean, I'm aware of what their schedule is, and I'm aware of what the project schedule is, and I would never do that in a way that risks the project or, you know, harming the schedule. But at the same time, this client that I was working for end of last year in San Antonio, they came up on sort of this, basically the development manager agreed to do a death march leading up into Christmas with his guys, where he was like, they're working all night, and he said, I need you to come in, I need you to drive in and help them, and you know, this was like the week before Christmas, and I just said, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah, I was a little less blunt than this, but that's a stupid idea. You know that this is not going to work. No death march has ever paid off. You're going to destroy your team and cost the company a lot of money, and you're going to have nothing to show for it. And I'm not going to be part of that. You know, I like you and I like the company, and I don't want to kill the relationship, but you know, I'm not going to be a participant to that. And you know, he said, okay, I understand, and then we continued to do a little bit of work, and then 3 months later, quit the company because obviously I was right. You know, yeah.
Do you ever do any fixed cost projects?
No. And I wouldn't say that I absolutely never would. But
that's a little bit hard to do because they always change the requirements.
Yeah, my experience as an employee has led me to understand that always backfires. It just never works out. And it takes a lot more time up front to do the analysis to figure out what the time is, and I'm not good at doing that. And the client, I don't trust to do it correctly either. So,
do you do the business requirements, or they give them to you and then you review them?
It depends on the project. Actually, I've had one gig I did where I was doing some training as a subcontractor, and they wrote that as a fixed price contract to include up to X hours. And I actually probably made money off that because I didn't use as many hours as they paid me for. But that was sort of an aberration. The downside is of being self-employed. Stress, I think I'm being honest when I say this. I have not really had very many sleepless nights where I'm laying awake thinking about how I'm going to pay the bills. I mean, it just hasn't been that way. And I'm normally not a late, woohoo, stress-free guy. I stress out about lots of things, but I've never really freaked out over where the next, check's gonna come from. But I probably am under more stress than maybe I would be otherwise. This is big. For all my happy talk about not having to ask permission to take vacation, I also don't have anyone paying me when I'm on vacation like I would if I was an employee. I don't have health insurance is a nightmare. I don't have a 401k, or I don't have anyone paying into my 401k other than me. I don't have all that sort of ancillary stuff you get as an employee, even if you don't use it. Short-term life insurance or the disability insurance, and the free gym and all that sort of stuff. Absolutely does not exist for me. Anything I want, I pay. Taxes are not fun at all. I honestly probably earn less. I'm not reaching my full earning potential for where I am in my career. Part of that is sort of purposeful because I'm probably not working as much maybe as I could. I could definitely work more hours, and I choose not to. Again, that kind of feeds into needing to raise my rate so that I can work less hours and earn more or find other revenue streams. So, but it's not, being self-employed is not an automatic road to riches. I mean, I'm sure some people manage it better than I do and make more than I do, but it's not, that doesn't happen automatically. That requires work on your part if you're really going to maximize your earning. I do sort of worry, I don't worry, but I think a little bit about, well, this has been great for 5 years. What about 5 years from now, or 10 years from now? Can I still do this? Is this going to last me till I retire? I don't know. I honestly have no idea. And again, I kind of go back to the idea that the worst case scenario is I can always get a real job. And I will do that if I have to. Is that?
I said, don't count on it once you get past 45.
I just hit that last month. So.
It's harder. It's a lot. You can take it from me. I'm 65 and I've got great experience, but I have a hell of a time trying to find another job right now.
Yeah.
Because of my age. They'll just drop your, they just kind of, they love your resume and stuff, and then you show up and then they look at you and their jaws drop like.
At the same time, I had this article saved somewhere. I saw it earlier this week about talking about how one of the biggest concerns that employers in the U.S. had was finding software developers. I'm like, why aren't we all rich? Like, that just, if there's that much demand, then we're the supply. Why? I mean,
the other thing I read about, like a lot of the programmers and stuff that Silicon Valley, they can't find a job because a lot of it is the younger programmers don't want to feel like they're working with their fathers.
I mean, ageism is the new.
So age is, and there's a lot of it.
And it's real serious.
Going on, whether they say so or not.
That is true.
It's true.
It's true.
Oh, I believe y'all. I haven't personally experienced that
Not
yet.
Someday.
Although I will say I've worked with people who are young enough to be my child.
Most of the companies that we attack in Silicon Valley and Austin, I know especially, and they are taking out many things like they don't track your vacation, unlimited. So it's more like goal based. So isn't that like merging more together? Like what advantages you told about doing on your own?
yeah, I work
along with promotions, and those happen mostly to the internal.
I worked for a company a couple years ago. It was a really great company. I loved it. It's probably the best job I've ever had. This was when I lived in DC. And they had like unlimited vacation, and they had all these really great sort of Google-ish perks. And I remember the reality of it was that even though they had unlimited vacation, people didn't use it. They were like afraid to use it. And just psychologically, they thought they could, but they didn't actually go through with it.
Getting that number, it's like
That's been around a
setting a
while.
limit, like in how much you can take, right?
Yeah.
And then you like don't feel guilty. It's like they gave me 3 weeks. I'm taking my 3 weeks. They can be unlimited. It's like, what did he take? He took a week and a half. It's like, well, I should take a week.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing, right? The unlimited vacation, if you actually like have a
I've had a
work
rough
ethic,
year.
you're the one that gets screwed over.
Yeah.
Right? Because I don't know about y'all, but you know, when I leave one job, I take, you know, banked vacation time, right? And get a nice big fat check. When you have unlimited vacation,
Yeah.
there ain't no banked vacation time for you to take with you.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah, but your work is basically goal-based, not hour-based. So it's not like you work this many days. It's like, are you completely?
the unlimited vacation is a benefit to the employer, not the
They
employee.
get to write off a lifestyle like
They do. They do. And the reality is most people don't take all of their vacation time.
My brother-in-law works for an oil company, and he's like 7 weeks vacation now, and they literally like forced him to take it. Like every month, he's taking days off, you know, because I guess they won't bank it or pay it out or whatever. So
Yeah, they stopped doing that. They
Yeah.
stopped.
which I guess I that's a great problem to have. But
They'll let you bank, companies that I was with would let you bank X amount of time, like a year or 2 years worth of vacation time to limit it. And if you didn't use it, you would lose it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
now,
my company stopped.
Right, right.
I work for Moore and Herman. What they do is they'll let us bank about 240 hours. But if we have any more than that, we can sell it back, which very few companies do that. The company I worked for before, that they used to let me carry over as much as I want, but then they changed that policy and went to you take it all or you lose it.
right.
So if you had 4 weeks, if you didn't take all 4, so a lot of times I got to where, got to December and I was taking almost all of December off. Because he was taking or losing. But during the whole year, it's like, oh, no, they wanted me here to do that, so I couldn't take vacation. And even if that comes into play, when it comes to the end of the year, I said, well, hey, you guys didn't let me take it here, so I'm taking it now.
Anyway, I think this is pretty much the end of it. Let's wrap up. More questions? Yeah.
Sorry, I have so many questions.
Drink the water, Kool-Aid, jump in the pond.
So at least in my experience, I feel like the contracting gigs have been very different if I'm working with either the business side or the IT side. I was wondering kind of your percentage of clients, what percentage are you kind of subcontracted in is like, I'm the Xamarin person who's kind of augmenting and helping technical guys versus this is the business and I'm just like writing the application.
It's a pretty good split. I mean, there's some where I'm part of that team, actively working as part of the team, as the expert, you know, within the team. There's some where I'm just developing the product for them, and there's some where I'm just sort of there as the consultant and I do training and answer questions, but I'm not really actively doing coding. So it's kind of the whole gamut. But I'd say the majority of the cases I'm plugged into the dev side of the equation. I'm not really working in the business. So thanks. Feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn or email me if you have questions. If your company needs Xamarin work, hey, here I am. I'm working. Seriously, reach out. I'll be happy to talk to you about that. And otherwise, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for joining us for the September 2018 meeting of the Houston.net Users Group. Our next meeting will be on October 11th at the Improving Houston office at 10111 Richmond Avenue. Be there at 6:30 as we kick things off with pizza and prizes. If you happen to be in Houston then, or on any second Thursday, we'd love for you to join us.